Welcome to NWA Connie Corso's podcast, where we talk all things dogs. Welcome back. What's going on, guys? NWA Connie Corso is back in the house. We welcome everybody back. We got a very special guest today. You got to be on the rock if you don't know who this guy is. Brother Haz. Am I pronouncing that right? Haz or Haz?
Well, technically, my name is Hajar.
Okay.
But for all you English folks, we say Haz.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Chill Canine is in the house. Chill Canine is in the house. Everybody, let's go. Brother, we are glad you came in to chop it up with us. And my guest host for today is John Mims. I'm giving him time to get set, and then I'm gonna bring him in. But Haz, let me ask you this. Give me a brief background, even starting with when did you notice your first love for dogs?
Well, I liked dogs always as a kid, but I actually I'm half Middle Eastern, so when we grew up, we didn't have dogs. We weren't allowed. You know how the Middle Eastern people are with dogs, right? So
Yeah.
for us, it was a no dogs. But I always liked them as a kid. I was always super interested in them. I'd always go up to them whenever I could, and you know, wanna have some sort of interaction. My first hands-on interaction with dogs was actually I got a job as a canine handler for a security company. So I would do that during my summers, and I really got to like working with the shepherds, and they had Dobermans and stuff like that. So I was working with those dogs, going to various sites, so on and so forth. So that was my first real interaction with dogs. So that's kind of what got me interested in them. From there, believe it or not, it's not like a sexy story like I was a Navy SEAL or something, getting after it in Iraq or anything like that.
Right.
It was actually, one other thing that really got me into dogs, like even after the security job, was watching Caesar Milan, of all people, on Nat Geo. That was before I knew anything about dogs, right? I watched
Right.
that dude and I'd be like, God damn, that's cool, man. I want to
Yeah.
do that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Hey, John, you got any questions for him about his early background before we start moving into it?
Hans, how long have you been in the dogs? About 10 or 12 years?
Man, so I mean, I did like so when I was a canine handler for a security company, it was like '06.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, and then ever since then, I've kind of been off and on dabbling, and then I got real hard into it. I would say maybe about 11 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. Well, so and you're a dog breeder as well, right?
Yeah. I've bred shepherds, Mallees, and Presa Canario.
Oh, okay. Damn, you getting the presser too?
Oh
Okay.
yeah, I was in the presses for a minute. I had a few litters, and then I got out of it.
Right. So you kind of initially viewed the training as a hobby, right? And then it kind of
100. I
okay.
had when I started as a professional trainer at the time, like I actually got involved in IGP just like kind of on the club level.
Right.
And like the accepted truism in the club was that you could never make money training dogs when I
Mm,
got involved in it. You know what I mean? So I never looked at it as a way to make an income. I just looked at it as being something super interesting. And
mhm.
then I kind of fell into it becoming my job. You know, it wasn't on purpose. It was a complete accident.
Okay, okay. So
Yeah.
you did some IGP. Um, Somebody asked me to one minute, but I'll get into that. But when was and how was Shield Canine formed? When did you
So
flip the
Shield
switch?
Canine, I've told this story before on like live, so I'll try and like keep it, you know, like very cliff notes.
Okay.
But fundamentally, here's my thing. Like I always had an interest. I had a dual interest in dogs. I had an interest in the working side, you know, the protection, the dog sports side. But then I also had an interest in dog behavior. I've always found it really fascinating the idea that you get this dog that's like, you know, out of control. He's crazy. He's biting people, whatever, and you get this dog in line and you get this dog so that they can go out in public and nobody knows that this dog used to do that kind of stuff. I always found that interesting. I always found that fascinating, kind of like taming the beast, so to speak. So I always liked that. And then, of course, the dog sports side, and the protect, just having a dog that will protect you, that kind of stuff's always been interesting for me as well. So Shield Canine was kind of a compromise between those two interests. My goal initially was, you know, like I said, I get a lot of people approaching me when I'd be walking around with my dogs. I think at the time I was running, I had two shepherds at the time. And people would be always asking me, like, oh, can you help me train my dog? Blah, blah, blah. So if I was, I had a regular 9 to 5 at the time. And I said, you know what? Let me start doing some training on the side. You know, maybe I make a few $100 and we'll have a good time. I get to work with more dogs, and that's going to be a plus for me. So I started doing that actually out of a farmer's field.
Mm,
I had a farmer's field, and I would just, you know, 2 months, half the year, obviously we get a lot of snow, right? So half the year I would train out of there. And I did that for about a year, before I realized, man, like this is really picking up way more than what I expected it would. And if I want to keep doing this, I think I need to get a little more formal about it, a little more serious about it. So then I rented a small commercial unit, and you know, I really got my website going and all that stuff. But Shield Canine, like the idea of Shield Canine was, I wanted the protection side, but I also wanted the training side. So it kind of, for me, it was like, you know, Shield, obviously protection, right? But you know, also I thought it was a cool name, and at the time I didn't see anybody else using it, so I said, let's be Shield Canine.
Mm.
mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
You
Gotcha.
find your part of Canada where you live is it was more you didn't have a lot of competition there, or it's just a good spot where you pick that you can grow real quick.
So when I started, there was no, like I told you, the accepted reality was that, you know, like everybody kind of agreed that you would not make money training dogs, pet
Mhm.
dogs, right? Like there was no money to be made really. And I was told that by people that profess to train pet dogs. And I told you that
Mhm.
that was like my first kind of interaction with the industry, was people who were in the industry not make, clearly, obviously, like you can see, right? Like they weren't making money, they weren't doing well.
Mhm.
And you know, so around me, all there was like cookie trainers. You know, there wasn't anything serious. There wasn't anybody that I would call a serious dog trainer. So there wasn't really, the type of training that I do was not prevalent when I started. Now, obviously, now they're a
Yeah.
dime a dozen and they're everywhere, and you know,
Mhm.
a lot of them I made. But you know, now there's no shortage of it. But at the time, it was not there. And the type of training that I do, right, where you know the real functional obedience, you know, the real control on the dog, you know, fixing the behavioral problem, not like bullshit artist stuff where I'm like pretending to be like the dog whisperer or the alpha, or you know, I'm trying to, you know, throw hot dogs on the floor and pretend I'm accomplishing something. Like real shit. Like, hey,
Right.
he's out, he's trying to bite people. We're gonna put an end to that. He's not biting anybody anymore. That kind of stuff where it was like like I always call it outcome based dog training. It just really didn't exist. You know, I'm sure there was some people doing it in a small way, but I didn't know about them. So I really that's I think why my business really took off.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Um, Problematic dogs. I want to go ahead and get into that. Have you ever ran into dogs that mentally, like, this dog can't be fixed? It's just something genetically.
Yes, I
Yeah.
have. Luckily, it's not too many of them. But like I could probably count on the finger of one hand over the last decade of dogs that I've run into where I'm like, oh yeah, we got a neurological issue here. You're just the neurons aren't neuroning. You're not it's not coming together. You're not learning, right? Um, uh, I've run into a couple of them. Believe it or not, one of the worst ones I ever saw was a sheepadoodle. This thing was a psychopath,
Yeah.
like bit everybody, bit the owner, and like just was incapable of learning not to do it, learning, he could do some things, but like it would always be a very quick and fast regression, there's been a few dogs where I've seen that to be the case where it's like, just like with people, right? Like some of us are born, unfortunately, not well in the head, and there's a lot of reasons for that, whether it's a developmental issue, whether, maybe early experience. I'm a big believer in genetics. And just
Mhm.
as we know, some human beings, unfortunately, aren't born with the best genetic genetic quality. It's the same for the dogs, but it goes a step further, obviously when the dog is like a severe danger to everybody around him. But luckily, it's not so common. I think it's very overdiagnosed, to be honest with you.
Right.
Okay, let me ask you this question: do those dogs that you run into that you can identify the problem, the behavior issues or whatever, do you try to rehab those dogs like a lot of people say they rehabbing the dogs or whatever they call it now, where they say they're fixing the dogs? Do you ever try that, or you do it, or you believe in it?
Well, look, what do we mean by rehab, right? Like, are we being like, I don't buy into this idea that you can completely change a dog's natural predisposition,
Mhm.
right? If a dog wants to fight other dogs, like if you get a real proper bred game pit bull, this is the
Right.
Mhm.
example that most people, most reasonable people can understand. You get a proper game bred pit bull, right, that really wants to fight another dog and is about that life, and he comes from multiple generations of dogs that were bred for that specific quality. Now, I can get that dog in public, I can get him around other dogs, and I can put a lot of inhibition on him where even though he might want to do it, he knows that he can't do it,
Hmm.
right? But would I trust him alone in a room with another dog? Hell no.
Yeah.
Do
Right.
I know that there is a limit? There's a limit. There's always a limit. So it's like, is
Hmm.
that dog rehabbed or is that dog under control? You know what I mean? Like for
Hmm.
me, the idea of rehab is that you're bringing something back to its natural state, right? That's what rehab is. You're a human being. You're on drugs. You've left your natural state, right? You've put all these toxins into your body and created the dependence. That's where this idea of rehab comes from, right? So now you're rehabbing, you're detoxing, you're getting all the chemicals out of your body, you're removing the dependence that you have, or at least getting rid of as much of that dependence as possible and bringing yourself back to nature. With the dog, right, that wants to, let's say, kill other dogs, and I know this always bothers people, so I use it as an example because it kind of puts it right in your face and gets you face to face with nature and reality. He wants
Hmm.
to kill other dogs. How are you going to rehab him from something that is his natural state, right?
Right.
So that's my opinion on that. But for
Hmm.
sure, you can get a dog that has a lot of genetic predispositions that, let's say, aren't particularly productive to living in healthy, in civilized society, and you can get that dog to the point where the average person wouldn't know he was like that. And as long as you continue to manage him properly and utilize those controls that you installed in training, you shouldn't have any issues, right? But
Right.
Hmm.
rehab, that word is overused, and again, it's something that I think a lot of cookie pushers like to use to make people believe that they can change something that is fundamental.
I'm so glad you said that because a
Right.
lot of trainers are using that term so freely and half-heartedly. Saying, "Oh, we rehab dogs or we reprogram." Yeah, you can reprogram them to about 98% maybe, and then when you
Yeah.
give them back to the clients, if they don't keep up the work that you put in and you teach them how the dog was reprogrammed a little and how to keep that stuff going and where that behavior never pops back up. I think that's where a lot of people run into those issues at with that. And I'm glad you said that because not a lot of trainers are willing to admit that. They just kind of, like you said, cookie cutters. Oh, yeah, I can rehab them. They charge them a ton of money and then they just turn them out, and whatever happens, what happens.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's important to be really realistic with people. Like I'm always overly pessimistic with people about potential outcomes. And I know it drives some people away, but I'd rather under promise and over deliver than over promise and under deliver.
Hmm.
That's my outlook. And the more you're realistic about it, I think the more potential for success you have. There's nothing wrong with some dogs, like I said, like I've had a lot of dogs that are really antisocial dogs that will bite somebody in the street for no reason. That I get to the point where they're completely off leash obedient. They're next to me. Nobody would know that they're like that. You know what I mean? But doesn't mean that I changed who they were fundamentally. I just put a lot of inhibition on them and taught them, hey, you better not do that. That's not allowed.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Um, you mentioned genetics earlier. How aggressive of a breeder are you? I mean, for the you you dealing with dogs that have specific function. How aggressive are you at keeping traits in your lines?
So I actually, I've learned a lot with breeding and with breeding a lot of different lines. I don't take anything, a lot of people, they hear someone say it on the internet and then for them it becomes like truth and gospel.
Hmm.
Now, for better and for worse, I'm not that guy. I always have to find out for myself, whether it comes to breeding, training, anything else. So sometimes that means I get to learn the easy way, and sometimes that means I get to learn the hard way. So
Right.
I'll tell you this, like a couple years ago, I completely scrapped my German Shepherd breeding program. Completely. Like I got away from it. I didn't have like a litter for 2 years, right? And I just, actually recently got back into it. And that's because I had to be honest. I didn't like the consistency of what I was producing, and I decided, hey, you know what? This isn't good enough for me. Yeah, I could continue to sell puppies and people will buy it because has bred it or whatever. But for me, it wasn't like I wasn't happy enough with the consistency. There were some good dogs for sure, but like the consistency wasn't what I wanted.
Hmm.
And the belief that I had about certain traits and how they carried across and stuff was not what I wanted. So I got away from it. Now I got a whole bunch of new females, and they're all actually now starting to come to that age where I can breed them. I'm actually waiting for a few heats right now. Um, but yeah, like, certain things like reactive aggression, prey, nerves, all of these types of things that we look for, stability of temperament. I never really had a big problem with health. Like health, I've always generally been pretty fortunate with. But those types of things that matter to me, right? The character of the dog. That's something where I've definitely learned a lot through trial and error about how that carries to the puppies. So for me, like I said, I started fresh with some lines that I've seen over the years. I've seen those lines and I really believed in them because I'd seen like multiple dogs from those lines. So I did the hard thing, right? I bought puppies from those lines, raised them up, x-rayed them, put them through training so I could really learn what the dog was, not what I wished the dog was, but what the dog
Right.
actually was. And now I have a brace of females right now. I got about 4 females that I believe in, and I believe they're going to produce the next generation for me. And I'm going to have several different types that I'm going to be using moving forward. And then I'll be able to really put my stamp on a line. I will say, like, you don't have a line until you're like 2 or 3 generations in. And for me, I've only ever kept first generation. I never kept second generation.
Mhm.
So I don't say that I have a line, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Do you think the male is replacing the shepherd?
No, they're
Okay.
very different.
Okay.
In my opinion, it is harder. It is harder to find a good Malinois than it is to find a good German Shepherd.
Mm.
You see a lot of people fooling around with Malinois, but inevitably, and the thing with the Malinois is it's really easy to make you look good in a very specific context, right? So you'll see people that the dog just has banging obedience, like very fast twitch. He's an athlete, he's moving, and the dog is super fast in the obedience, super flashy in the obedience. But then you watch that dog track or you watch that dog's protection and you're like, ho ho, where'd you go? Right?
Mm.
Or you'll see the other side. Maybe the dog is a lightning bolt in protection, and then you'll see the obedience and the track, and like, man, it ain't there. I Or they'll have a stability issue or a character issue. I think, Malinois are very good. If you're like, looking, listen, I just want a sport dog. I don't give a shit about anything else. I just want a sport dog. I just want to go on the field and put, two, three phases together and have it look good. Yeah, you can find a Mally for that. But like, in terms of the total dog, in my opinion, it's easier to find a good German Shepherd than it is to find a good Malinois. So
Okay.
I think what people are confusing is that when you go to Europe to buy green dogs, right? You generally Mally crosses, but what are they crossed with? They're crossed with German Shepherds. They're crossed with Dutchies. These aren't purebred Mals, right? Like, these are mixed dogs, right? These are basically, they call them herders, right?
Hmm.
It's a herder, right? So it's not a Mally. It might be yellow, right? If you breed a German Shepherd to a Mally, you end up with yellow dogs, right? That's so they all look like Mallies. Even sometimes, if you breed those puppies back to a German Shepherd, so it's basically three-quarter German Shepherd, you'll still end up with yellow dogs that look like Mallies. That yellow is a dominant trait, right? That is I would say that is the primal. Like, even dingoes are yellow, right?
Hmm.
So that coloration, that look, is very dominant. So even when you see a mix, it will look oftentimes like a purebred, but it's not.
Hmm.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yes.
You
Okay,
got anything on
let
that,
me
John? Okay.
yeah, piggyback this part. When you say the people that get a Mally, that and it makes them look good. Well, I've been taught and been training long enough to I look past that to see the actual skill that's in the person, because the dog most of the time will make that person look good. Would you say?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, look, like,
Yeah.
I'm speaking like from a very and don't get. I know all the Mally people are all going to get upset with me. Listen, I ran two Mallies for like years, and I competed with a Mally in IGP, right? I'll probably
Hmm.
do it again at some point. They're a different kind of dog, but they can make you look good in a specific context where maybe you don't deserve to look. You're
Hmm.
not as good as that. So, like, I'll give you an example. My Mally that I competed with in IGP, he always made me look good in obedience. And protection. When he was under control, he would look real good too. But that had not much to do with me. You know what I mean? It was a good dog, and you could have trained him five different ways, and he still would have had like a good outcome. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Because
Hmm.
there were certain traits, genetic traits that he had that lent him to performing well in those areas. So this is what I'm speaking about. For me, German Shepherds are a little bit harder to train. For instance, when we're talking about creating like really nice obedience, for me it's harder to make nice obedience with a German Shepherd than it is with a Mally, and also harder for it to make it as reliable. But for me overall, right, like, the Mally, because of the qualities that it has, kind of like the Border Collie. It's basically like a Border Collie with
Hmm.
aggression, right?
Yeah.
There's a reason why a lot of trainers like Border Collies. There's a reason why a lot of trainers like Mallies. So there's nothing inherently wrong with it, as long as we're calling a spade a spade.
Hmm. And that's what I think a lot of it is nowadays, that people don't want to call a spade because a Mally will make an average trainer look superb or lower class look medium. I've
Yep.
been breeding males myself 27 years, and I've seen them all at different levels. I've had some that wasn't worth feeding. I've had some of them that I've gotten back from other trainers from the military that they just couldn't handle. So I've seen them at both ends of the spectrum, you know. But when people nowadays, some of the younger trainers getting into the business, and they get a nice Mally, and I'm this, and they go jump in debt, and then 3 or 4 years down the road, because that Mally made them look good or it's easy to do, then they come across somewhere they really have to put in the work to
Yep.
get the best product. Then that's when they become in trouble. They get in trouble, and then before you know it, they fold it up, and then they're down the road they go. You know.
Uh, yeah, I've seen that. And the other thing that I see with the Mallies is this: it's easy. Mally will make you look good for 10 seconds on Instagram. You know, let's see your trial. Go trial with that Mally. No
Hmm.
collars, no nothing. It's just you and that dog on the field. Let me see you at a high level and what you can do. And oftentimes you'll see, man, it's a little bit of a different kettle of fish at that point. Now all the bullshit is gone, all the help is gone, and now it's just you and the dog, and we get to see you and we get to see the dog. And a lot of the times it's not the same picture as it was for perhaps on Instagram or Facebook or wherever.
Gotcha. Well, I looked at some of your videos, and it wasn't hard to. It wasn't long before I could tell you don't give a shit. I said I got to go get him. So with that being said, we finna step down in the fire a little bit, guys. I want to know your first off, we'll start with this, your personal training philosophies. I heard you talk about simplifying dog training and like truly understanding canine
Yeah.
behavior. And what's your philosophy, your approach to most dogs?
My goal is that if I talk about dog training, the average person can understand what I'm saying and not know anything about dogs. I know that there's this big push nowadays to, I call them like the Jedi master dog trainers. You know, they're walking around fucking barefoot, you know, long hair, whatever. They got the special hat or some weird shit that they got going on, and they're acting like, you know, they're some kind of like Buddhist monk, you know, talking about
Yeah,
dog training.
yeah,
I just
yeah.
want to be like a regular dude. I'm going to talk to you about dog training, you know, and you should be able to understand what I'm saying. Yes, obviously that there's some stuff that is complicated and maybe not so easy to understand, but I try to get rid of all the bullshit, whether it's scientific mumbo jumbo, you know, that we all use these words, but these are the words of people that did not know how to train dogs. Never forget that. They did not know. BF Skinner could not fucking train a dog to save his life, right?
Yeah.
Pavlov probably could train a dog, but it's still like consider comparatively speaking, he understood like next to nothing about dog behavior, you know, compared to someone that's been training them in a real way for 10 years. I appreciate, you know, the various concepts that they brought forward through laboratory experimentation, but let's not deify these individuals. They were not dog trainers and they did not know how to train dogs. And you know, let's never forget that. So whether it's scientific mumbo jumbo that people like to use in order to appear maybe more smart and more expert than they might actually be, or whether it's, you know, pretending to have like some kind of secret knowledge that nobody's ever heard of before, so that people come and, you know, pay their money for whatever it is that you're selling, right? I don't buy into any of that horse shit. At the end of the
Right.
day, I train dogs, right? Whether it's for dog sport, whether it's a pet dog, whatever kind of dog it is. And it should be simple, because if it's simple for me to explain it to you, it's simple for you to do, and it's simple for the dog to understand, right?
Right. Right.
That's my philosophy.
Let me
Yes.
ask you this. Who was your sorry, John? Let me just ask this one
Yeah.
real quick. Who has been your biggest influences in dog training?
I can't, you know, I can't point to one guy. I
Okay.
can't point to one guy. I've never gone and studied under anybody. I've
Okay.
gone to, listen, obviously I've done a lot of like self-studying in terms of like finding information on the internet and you know, watching, like that's all I used to do in my back before I was a dog trainer. I'd work at the place I worked. I'd be on the computer in the back just watching dog training videos and all the stuff I could glean on the internet, or you know, you get the dog training DVDs and stuff like that, and you would try and like pull as much information as you could. But there's been a variety of people that I've taken things from. Don Sullivan, a bird dog trainer. You know, I really appreciated some of the content of his that he put out way back when. And I learned, I would say, a fair bit from him. I went to a yogi, you know, I went to a Yogi Zhang seminar. I've said this before. Yogi Zhang was a student of Bart Balan. I went to a Yogi Zhang seminar like, I don't know, like 10 years ago, and that really changed a lot of what I did on the sport dog side of things. You know, I've taken things from Marco Cosconsalo. I've taken a lot from Stefan Schaub. You know, a lot of it from trial and error. You know, there was an old school guy, Brian Harvey. I learned a little bit about helper work from him. He was out in Michigan. You know, there's been a number of guys along the way that, you know, I've taken something from and added it to the repertoire of things that I do, but there
Mhm.
hasn't been one person where I'm like, that's the guy, I follow him. You know, I just, it's never been my way to be like that.
Gotcha. Right.
Yeah.
John, you got something?
No, we good. Go ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay. Okay. Let's delve into training tools, the pros and cons, and the importance of learning how to use them the correct way. What are some of your uh, tools you use, and your thoughts on how to deliver it to the dog?
Well, listen, at the end of the day, I'm big on negative reinforcement, right? Negative reinforcement, which is teaching the dog, how to avoid discomfort, how to seek comfort, right? Like that is fundamental. That supercharges any kind of training system. So when you talk about negative reinforcement, I know a lot of people are probably going to have kittens right now because they're thinking in terms of just like harsh stuff. Negative reinforcement can be anything from gently pulling a dog on a leash to, yeah, doing some, heavy duty stuff. There's a broad spectrum that encompasses negative reinforcement. It's basically any pressure that you make that, gets a dog, reinforces a specific behavior or teaches a dog to perform a specific behavior. But negative reinforcement is the bedrock of any successful training system, right? Now, balancing that with motivation, positive reinforcement, obviously is key if you want the dogs to look happy. But if you want the dogs to be reliable and if you want the dogs to be resilient, not just reliable, but resilient, right? Resilient means they can overcome stress, whether it's internal or external, and accomplish the job that they need to be able to accomplish, right? They can moderate their motivation. You see a lot of dogs, right? Like the high drive dogs, they want something so bad, their motivation's through the roof and it destroys the clarity, right? But
Mhm.
when you layer the negative reinforcement in there, it creates a lot of clarity, creates guide rails, for the dog so that they know where they can go and where they can't go. So for me, negative reinforcement, right, starts with the leash and ends with the e-collar, right? The leash for me is obviously step one, right? Just a regular leash. Like I'll train a puppy on a leash, or a slip lead for like 6, 7, 8 months. Like my personal sport dogs don't generally see the e-collar until, maybe 10 months, maybe, right? I do everything. I teach them all the negative reinforcement with a leash. And then I layer the e-collar over it the exact same way I use the leash. I layer the e-collar into everything that I teach the dog. And then of course, if you're in a situation where you can't use an e-collar, you can't use an e-collar. It is what it is. But at that point, the dog should already know what they need to do. But for me, the e-collar is the most advanced tool in dog training, right? So a lot of people kind of think of dog training in terms of tools. I think of dog training in terms of what I'm trying to accomplish and what tools best, assist me to get there. So for instance, like on the track, right? Am I using an e-collar? Very rarely. With some dogs, I might, but that's at the very end of the training process where I'm using the e-collar in a very specific way. I'm using the pinch collar a lot on the track because the pinch is going to be the best form of negative reinforcement that I can utilize in order to accomplish the goal of getting a dog that checks each and every footstep with commitment and clarity, as well as with reliability in any and all situations. So in that circumstance, like a pinch collar is the best tool, right? So it completely depends on what you're trying to accomplish and what your goal is. But my fundamental principle that I apply to everything is, we've got to have the positive and we also have to have the negative. And the negative controls the positive and it also makes the positive more positive. Without darkness, there can be no light.
Okay. So
Mhm.
Yes.
okay, John, you
So
got anything?
yeah, so knowing and what separates trainers is knowledge and where the knowledge falls. So when you have negative reinforcement and positive, or negative punishment and positive, or whatever they call it, knowing how much to give with a certain dog, because if some dogs can take a little more than other dogs,
Yep.
so that's where I think a lot of people get in trouble when they try to use negative reinforcement. They'll correct at a 5 where their dog can't take a 5. You may need a 3. It's, if you're scaling it out,
Yeah.
and that's where a lot of them get in trouble. And once I think in all of my experiences, and some dogs, I've seen people call me and say, "Oh man, my dog's a little hand shy," and my first response is, "Well, how heavy-handed were you on the dog?" Because the dog is shying away every time they reach to touch him. You can tell that they
Yeah.
were too heavy, and that's an disciplined person or somebody that just don't know the difference. And there's a lot of trainers that do it, and then they try to come back and they try to cover it up or fix it up and all that. Where it's too late now, it can't be fixed. You
You can
know,
see it.
in my opinion, it can't be fixed. I should say. You know, um, I'd rather not use e-collars unless it's just a must, where I just have to. I'm not saying I don't, but if I don't have to, I'll try everything else in my toolbox before I use that. And what I mean by toolbox, I mean this instead of an actual tool, you know. So knowing and just knowing how to correct the dogs, how much correction is needed to fix that particular problem. And then you have to judge the dog's temperament to take that negative punishment, because some of them, they won't recover well from it.
I think it really depends on how you use an e-collar. So for me,
Mm-hmm.
like especially if we're talking about, dog sport, or a working dog or something like that, the way I would use an e-collar with that dog is significantly different than the way I would use it on a pet dog,
Mm-hmm.
right? But for me, the way I look at an e-collar, okay, when we're speaking in the context of a working dog, all right, think about a performance car, all right? Performance car has a lot of horsepower. It's really fucking fast, right? It goes really fast. But what does it need in order to control that speed? It needs upgraded steering, upgraded suspension, top tier braking, right? It needs much more advanced controls. It can't have basic level of control. It must have a very high level of
Mm-hmm.
systems that control the car so that it does not go out of control. Cars that are famous for being really dangerous to drive are generally cars that have something wrong in the suspension or something, that wasn't up to par, whether it was in the way the brakes were manufactured or the steering or anything else, right? Engine displacement, whatever. For me, the e-collar is all those things rolled up into one. The e-collar is the suspension, it is the braking, it is the steering, right? And when you use it the right way, it's also the gas. So when you
Mm-hmm.
see me train my sport dogs, right? I'm not using the e-collar because I need them to listen to me. That's not why. Like I don't use the e-collar in a way that it's like this is so that you have to do what I tell you to do. I use the e-collar to ensure that I have minute control over the way that they perform every single behavior that I want them to perform. It's not enough that you sit. How fast did you sit? It's not enough that you're healing. Exactly where is your head and where is your ass in relation to me, right? Every little thing matters. And that e-collar allows me to constantly give the dog feedback, right? And I've done it many times. I'll take the fucking e-collar off, whether it's for a trial or whether it's just for a video to show that I can. And the dog will do all the same shit. But what it allows me to do is in a training session, there's constantly little feedback that I'm giving to the dog. Hey, that's wrong. Ooh, there, that's it, right there. Or, hey, I need a little more from you now. A little more, a little more, a little more, a little more, right? Ooh, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, right? The e-collar is me constantly giving the dog feedback. For me, the leash is how, of course, we start with that. And the dog learns how to accept signals from the leash, whether the signals mean, get after it, right? Whether the signals
Mm-hmm.
mean slow down, back up, pivot your ass in just a touch, speed up into that down, right? For me, an e-collar is simply a wireless leash, right? So for me, it's not like, oh, and I understand why people, look at it kind of as a thing of last resort. For me, it's not a thing of last resort. For me, I don't care whether it's a fearful dog, whether it's a sport dog, a police dog. I don't give a damn. It's a leash. And I'm going to teach the dog to accept it the same way I would teach him to accept a leash, because then I don't have to have the fucking leash in my hands anymore. And we're wireless, you know what I mean? And for me, that's better for me. Like I like to have my hands free so that I can, whether I'm dealing with reward toys or whatever else I'm dealing with, just one less thing for me to hold. And for me, a leash for a dog is something that they rely on a lot more than an e-collar, because the leash is a physical connection between you and the dog, and there's a weight. Even if you're not pulling on the leash, there's always a weight of the leash, and they feel the leash. And even if you move slightly without really pulling the dog, they feel the weight move in the leash, right? And the dog is able, in my opinion, with the leash, it's fine in the beginning, but the dog is able to shut their brain down a little more and think less about what they're doing, because they just, it's kind of like walking along and then you feel a little pressure. It's like, oh yeah, that means I go this way, right? You don't have to open your eyes. You don't really have to think about it. It just means you go that way, you go that way. Ooh, that means I sit. Ooh, that means I lie down. Whereas the e-collar now, there's no direction to it. It's just there. And the dog now must engage his mind in order to solve the problem of it. Now, of course, the way you introduce it to the dog is he does understand what it means in the various contexts that you're giving it to him in.
Hmm.
But he must utilize more self-control with the e-collar. He must utilize more impulse control with the e-collar. You must he must be more motivated with the e-collar. So for me, advanced e-collar training is is a thing that I'm working towards. It's not a thing I'm trying to get away from, or it's not a thing I'm trying to avoid. But that's
Hmm.
just how I look at it.
Hmm.
Let me ask you something. First off, everybody get the likes up. If you're watching on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, get the likes up, share it. How do you introduce the e-collar? I mean, when you first start using it, do you start hitting them, or you get them used to wearing it, or what, or not?
Well, obviously, look, for a sport dog, I'll often have my like puppies wearing it and I'll never use it. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? They'll just have it on. It's just another collar for them. It doesn't mean anything. Like my dog right now, he has no clue what an e-collar is. And he's been wearing one for 5 years, my primary sport dog, right?
Right.
Um, like it's just something that he wears that it just means we're going to go do shit as far as he's concerned. Doesn't mean anything from a physical standpoint. So yeah, I mean, like the first time they wear it, we're probably not going to use it. For a pet dog, typically I'll introduce it in the context of a recall because for me, that's the default behavior I want to teach a dog when they feel that stimulation. It means get back, right? That's for a pet dog. For a sport dog, I'll typically introduce it in the context of active behavior. Because what do I want the e-collar to mean? Right? I don't want the e-collar for my sport dog. I don't want the e-collar to make him low. I want the e-collar to bring him up. Right? I want to see him work to defeat the e-collar. And I want him, I always say, like, my sport dogs eat e-collar like it's candy. Right? Like they enjoy that shit, right? It brings them up. It's a comforting feeling for them, right? It's help for them, but it's also motivation for them, right? It
Gotcha.
gets them faster, it gets them more active. And the reason why is because of the way they learn to deal with it is active active work always. So, like in the beginning with a sport dog, I have two ways that I like to introduce the e-collar. One is in barking. I'll have the dog back tied, and I'll have a dog that likes barking, and I'll add it in the barking. So it'll reinforce the barking, right? So he'll learn. Oh, that means bark more, right? Get rewarded. So he'll learn it from that context. Or I'll do it in go and come, right? Go and come is when you have two balls, right? So you hold the dog by the collar, you throw a ball, he wants to go get it. You buzz him. He goes, right? The second he gets it, you buzz him again. He comes back. And as he comes back, he sees that second ball there. Bam, he takes the ball. So now he got electric to go and he got electric to come. And the electric was paired with something that was extremely motivational, right? Go
Okay.
and come, right? So those are the ways that I like to introduce the e-collar to a sport dog. It creates a very active mindset. For me, the e-collar, I never want to see a sport dog take an e-collar and get low. I never want to see a working dog, with some exceptions. I shouldn't say never. There are some police dogs, but that's a different story. Anyways, generally speaking, I never want to see, a working dog take an e-collar and get suppressed. I want to see them actively work to solve the problem of the pressure, but in an active way, right? Active, right?
Hmm.
Like you'll see if I use the e-collar on my dog, let's say he's a little in front of me in the healing and I catch him for forging. He'll be a little bit in front of me and he'll be like, "Arr," and he'll get back, but there'll be that active response from him, right? And you'll see that his body language in no way changes. His ears are still up. If anything, it'll activate him a little more and it'll drive his energy and his arousal a little bit higher. That's the response I want from the e-collar.
Gotcha.
I
Gotcha.
also use it a lot in protection too, whether it's for grips or for barking.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm gonna ask a question. This is from Mr. Alexander Guntas. He's a German Shepherd man. He visits this channel a lot. He got these questions for you. First thing, he want to know your thoughts on stick hits in Schutzen 3 trials. And the second question he wants to know is what do you think are the training differences in German Shepherds and Miles?
Okay, so for me, stick hits, like removing stick hits from the top level trials, was not good. There are some dogs now that can go through and look good in a protection routine, depending on the helper, that would not show nearly the same quality if they were receiving stick hits, right? A lot of people are like, oh, it doesn't matter, doesn't make a difference. For sure, it makes a difference. If you've got, and this goes to like, there's some sensitive dogs, typically it's Mallees, right? That the dog in IGP on the grip is judged on two things, right? The fullness of the grip and if the grip moves, right? So when the dog is in a gripping behavior, right? Is the dog full and calm or is the dog growling and shifting and pulsing on the grip, right?
Mhm.
So for those dogs now they're able to take a full grip and they are not worried. They've been desensitized to the stick over their head. It doesn't mean anything for them. But for the more, but in the back in the day, this would mean what? One, two, three, four, five. Right? You get the fifth one across the shoulders, and then again, one, two, three, four, five. The fifth one across the shoulders. So now this means what is coming? Means you're getting one across the shoulders. That
Mm-hmm.
separates a lot of dogs. Before those dogs, now they just like they go to sleep on the grip, right? No problem. I know it's not coming down on me, right?
Mhm.
Versus, oh man, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Boom, there it is, right? And you see the difference where it's like they're the good dogs, no problem. Yeah, if I give it to me, put it across my shoulders, I don't care, right? I eat that stuff every day, it doesn't matter for me. Whereas the more sensitive types, they're growling, they're shifting, their eyes are rolling in their head, and they're waiting for that stick to come down because they know it's coming. And you see the quality difference in the dog, right?
Mm.
So they've removed that now. So you're going to get dogs that come through now that have a lot more sensitivity. They would show a lot more. They might still pass, but they would show a lot of weakness. And they would be deducted appropriately for that weakness. Whereas you can now see dogs that might come through and look fantastic, and you know you won't see that weakness that is actually there because they removed the stickers. It takes a in IGP. You know, one of the big things that people criticize about it is that the lack of pressure from the protection phase in the protection phase. Now, when you are dealing with a quality helper, right? There are some helpers, and unfortunately they're rare, but there are some helpers that have the ability to put a lot of pressure into everything that they do. It might look like a routine to you, and it is a routine, but they're able to exude the pressure, and the dog reads that pressure, right? So, like for instance, in the FCI worlds, we had two helpers doing back half, which means the long attack and the drive, so on and so forth. In the
Mhm.
FCI worlds, the one they were both right-handed helpers. One of them was big, one of them was shorter, right?
Mhm.
The big guy, he was doing fine technical work. There was nothing special about what he was doing. It was safe, clear, concise work. The little guy, this guy was putting pressure on the dogs. We saw multiple dogs run. We saw multiple dogs avoid him in the long attack and in the drives, right? Why? Because he had that extra something, right? It wasn't even that you could say he was like, yeah, he was athletic for sure, but he had that extra something that the dogs were picking up. That even though, yeah, he's not making physical contact with them or anything, for them it was a lot. And those more sensitive dogs that were getting the high points in obedience, many of those dogs were running or they weren't outing in the protection because their around their adrenaline had never been pushed that high, right?
Mm.
They'd never been in that place where they're like, oh my God, like I might actually be in danger here.
Right.
There are a few helpers that are able to put that across for the dog, no matter what they're doing, but there's not enough of them. So things like
Mm-hmm.
stick hits, I think, are really important. And it was a huge mistake to go away from the stick hits. And you will see more and more now the quality of the dogs changing.
Yeah.
IGP is not about happy, it's about power, right? You watch a border collie healing, right? Like you can go watch FCI obedience or whatever, and you watch a border collie healing. You would not say it's powerful. You would say, wow, it's flashy, it's happy. The dog looks happy. When you watch an IGP dog, a strong IGP dog healing, like a strong one, like he's strong in protection too, not just good in the obedience, right?
Mhm.
You say, my God, that's powerful, right? It's kind of
Right.
like watching, somebody skipping down the field versus watching a sprinter just, you know, going all out at the like NFL combine or something. So we strive for power, right? That's what you want. And power can only come when the dog has conflict, when the dog has hardness, when the dog has more than just, oh, I'm happy to do this and work with you, right?
Mhm. Why did they take the stick hits out of the three routine?
Well, IGP is based in Germany,
Hmm.
right? Like that's the home of IGP. That is the governing bodies of IGP reside there. And in much of Western Europe, there are animal rights activists have basically taken over, right? Most dog training that we do here now is illegal. You're not allowed to put pressure on the dog. You're not allowed to cause any stress to the dog. You're not allowed to use various tools and devices. And of course, then it goes over to, oh, you're not allowed to make contact with the dog. And they would view the stick hit as contacts because you're hitting the dog with the padded stick. So it was viewed as contact, and this was viewed as, oh, we don't want to appear to be doing something illegal. They're going to, and they're already trying to ban the sport in multiple places in Germany, anyways, right? Or in Western Europe, anyways. So the SV and the other associated organizations in dog sport, they're always trying to like kowtow to these, animal rights extremists. They're always trying to look good and, hey, we're really all warm and friendly and all of this stuff. So, that's why they do these things. Like they change the name from Schutzhund to, IPO and then IGP. And they're always trying to appease. But if there's one thing they should have learned from World War II, appeasement does not work. Right. And you can
No.
never appease the type of people that are trying to get dog sport banned. You can never appease the type of people that, want to ban e-collars and all of these types of things. You don't even bother with them. You don't try to appease them, right? You be honest about who you are, what you do, and what you represent. And if it costs you everything, then so be it. At least you were honest. At least you were upfront about what it is that you do, right? Versus
Right.
trying to hide and pretend or turn it into something that it's not.
So
Hmm.
these groups, you telling me they're after the breeders, changing things with that, the training methods, even in sports, the tools and methods, all of that.
So listen, here's the reality about Western Europe. Okay, most of the people that compete in IGP are, I would say, most of them are located in Western Europe. Okay, in Western Europe, in most places, the methodology, like balance training, use of negative reinforcement, the use of various tools in dog training, are banned in many of these countries now. So the people that are successful at IGP at the highest level in those countries must train in secret. They pretend on the internet that they don't, and you'll see them every time they're training. There's like all sorts of like bandanas and shit on their dog's neck and whatever else, and it's always like they put forward like this, happy, fun vibe. But hey, man, like they still must, in order to be successful on that level, they must train in a way that is illegal now in their country, whatever country you want to, Finland, Sweden, whatever you want to talk about, right? So they all
Right.
have to train illegally, and whatever they say, they all do it, and they all go to various secret places, and they all train, and do what they have to do, right, in order to get to the big show, and hopefully they can be successful. But that's the reality. So what does that mean for IGP in the next decade? I don't know, but I don't think it's very good.
No.
Wow.
What,
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
he have a second part to his question, Joe? That guy.
Oh, yeah, he was asking the difference between Mallees and German Shepherds.
There we go.
Okay.
Fundamentally, a good German Shepherd tends to be a little bit more independent in the mind, and they're less biddable, right? So the trick with the German Shepherd is you have to convince them that it's their idea to do all the things that you want them to do. And once they believe it's their idea that you want them to do all the things that you want them to do, they'll be good at doing it. But the motivation, they don't generally have the same fast twitch responses that the Malleys have. They don't have the same neurotic commitment to doing things. Like Malinois love patterns. Like once they
Hmm.
learn how to do something, they're like a little bird with it. It's like, ooh, that was fun. Let me do that over and over and over and over and over again. And just performing the behavior in and of itself for the Malinois becomes intrinsically rewarding very fast. Your average German Shepherd, they have a little bit more of a calm mind. So for them, it's not like that. They're not like so OCD where it's like, ooh, I love doing this like this exactly the same way over and over and over and over again. This is so much fun. Like for them, it's like, yeah, it's fun. I like doing it, but I could take it or leave it. I could go do something else too, right? So getting a German Shepherd tuned up to working at that level and then keeping them consistent there and reliable there, especially if it's a lot of dog, is in my opinion a little bit more challenging.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, y'all ready to step down in the fire? I want to talk
Go with it.
about I want to talk about the difference in police dogs, sports dogs, personal protection dogs. What are the key differences in that?
Okay. Is that to me?
That's to you, yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, we have to look at the overall goals for both dogs, right? First, like, what is the goal of a sport dog? Well, the goal of a sport dog, and when we look at, like, obviously every sport is a little bit different, but fundamentally the goal of the sport dog is to go on the field and in obedience and protection phases, and if we're talking about IGP, also in the tracking phases, for the dog to earn the most points. And whatever that specific sport is, the dog needs to hit all the things necessary in order to, make the most points in their specific sport. Um, you know, Versus a police dog, the goal is to find the drugs, to find the bad guys, whatever it is that they're supposed to do. Versus a protection dog, the goal is to protect, right? I would say police and dog sport tend to be more offensive type of work, right?
Mhm.
It's get after it type of work. Whereas a protection dog fundamentally must be more reactive. They're not going after anybody, ideally, right?
Mhm.
They're reacting to situations, whether it's an intruder, whether it's someone who's being threatening. They're not engaging in offensive activities.
Mhm.
So that's the biggest fundamental difference right then and there. Now, between police and sport dog, I mean, look, you're going to need more. If we're talking about top sport, fundamentally, you're going to need. It's much harder to find a dog that's going to be capable of top sport versus police work. For police work, we just want a good fundamental, good nervous system. The dog doesn't have to be, particularly special there, but just like a good, decent nervous system that can handle environmental and social stimulation without, falling apart. And then you want good drive, good hunt drive, good prey drive so that the dog can do, bite work, so that the dog can hunt, the dog can track, so on and so forth. Whereas for dog sport, because it's so important that the dog does things in very specific ways, right? Like, it's not just enough that he heels down the field. How did he heel? It's not enough that he finished the track. How did he track? Like, did he hit every footprint? Did he pendulum slightly on that corner, right? And in the pursuit of the perfection that you try to attain in dog sport, you're putting pressure on the dog to make it better and better and better, right? You're building
Mm-hmm.
motivation and you're building pressure, and they're both coming together, and you're hoping that you pinnacle at the same time together and you both reach the pinnacle and that you're able to maximize the performance of the dog. If one comes too much out of balance, it all falls apart, right? It all falls apart. You want to bring them both together so that you are at the pinnacle of performance when you step on the field. That's a much different type of pressure. It's a lot more pressure, and there's a lot of dogs that don't have the fundamentals to handle that. And that's something that, again, I'd say that's probably why it's harder to find a dog for top sport than, for police work. But if you look at the bite work of both those types of dogs, I don't care whether it's PSA, IGP, regular police deployment type work. It's all like offensive type of work. Go get that guy. Go bark at that guy. Go, let go of that guy. Bite him again. Do all this type of extra stuff, right?
Mhm.
Offensive type work. And that makes sense, by the way, because dog sport, especially IGP, originally was designed as a way to test a dog's suitability for that type of work. So, of course,
Mm-hmm.
they're engaging in exercises that, are going to be more conducive, whether it's the bark and hold, whether it's a long attack, all of that type of stuff. Protection now is a little bit of a different thing, right? A personal protection dog doesn't have to have the same qualities as a sport dog. It doesn't have to have the same qualities as a police dog, right?
Mhm.
In fact, many cases you'll have sport dogs and police dogs that will not be good personal protection dogs, right? And vice
Mhm.
versa,
Right.
right? I would say, look, if you got, for instance, a pressa, all right, we'll use an example, a pressa, and you put that dog on a suit or you put that dog on a sleeve, he's chewing all over it. He doesn't have a nice grip. He's real thrashy. He's a little nervy on the grip, so on and so forth. versus, you know, obviously the sport dog or the police dog that has a nice, big, firm, full, solid grip, right? That dog maybe is that press is not going to do well on the sport field. He doesn't do well in what I call recreational bite work. But somebody comes in the house, he's going to tear the fuck out of them, right?
Right.
He's going to tear them up. He's not going to bite. It's not going to be pretty. There's going to be a lot of bite wounds, right? There's going to be a lot of holes in the person. And he's
Mm.
probably not going to stay in one place. He's going to travel all over and, you know, come off and bite again. And it's going to be a nasty, nasty thing. But from the context of his job, which is to protect that property that he's on, it's great. You know what I mean? So for protection dogs, I like them to be a little bit more actually on the reactive side if possible, right? That
Mhm.
it doesn't translate so well from a bite work perspective, right? Like in terms of like having nice, clean recreational bite work,
Yeah.
right? But on the flip side, they do tend to be a little bit more diligent in providing that active deterrent because I would say a protection dog, 9/10 of their job is to be a deterrent. So if
Right.
the dog is quiet and if the dog is super social, what kind of a deterrent is he really going to be? You want
Right.
that dog that's reactive, a little bit suspicious. He notices everything that's different. He barks. He's always making noise, you know, and he's going to make a big show at the fence or at the door or wherever else. Versus, you know, more of a sport dog or police dog that maybe isn't so much let's say bluster, right? Doesn't make that much noise, doesn't, you know, put on that big of a show. But, you know, they both have different jobs and their jobs are more conducive to what sorry, their behavior is more conducive to the specific job that they do. So it totally depends. And then you can
Right.
have the best of both worlds. That dog can be a great sport dog, a great police dog, or a great protection dog. You know, and that's always really nice to see. I find those are extremely rare to find though.
Right. Right. Hey, everybody is in the chat with X and everybody, every platform. Get the lights up. He's cooking right now. John, do you have anything for I ask the next one?
So, do you breed? Do when you breed and do you kind of pick your puppies out to kind of gear them towards a certain particular thing? Where this one would be better suited for sport, this one would be better suited for police work, stuff
In
like
all my
that,
time,
and at what age do you kind of start figuring that stuff out?
in all my time breeding and trying to pick puppies, the one thing I've learned is you can't pick puppies. You can pick
Mm,
breedies, but you can't pick puppies. I've seen too many puppies change fundamentally that
mm-hmm,
I would never be comfortable in picking. Now, we as human beings, it's our human condition that we always want to control everything and we always want to know, right? And this idea that
mm-hmm,
you can go into a litter and you can pick the best puppy is something that a lot of people, you know, really believe in. Now, obviously, there's certain things like physical traits. Obviously, you can see that in a puppy and you can have a pretty good idea what that dog's going to turn into physically right from the get go. But in terms of behavior, drive, all of that type of stuff, the only thing that I think you can see with puppies is you can see the fundamental nervous system of the dog, right? So, like if the dog's like super scared of everything, right, and the 7, 8 week old puppy, and he's super nervous about everything, not a good, you know, probably is going to be a little bit nervy as an adult, right? Like
mm-hmm,
that's, I don't care what you do, you're probably going to see some nerves. If the dog doesn't have any food drive as a puppy, right? Like he really doesn't care to eat out of your hand. He won't work particularly hard for food. Generally speaking, those dogs don't have a lot of food drive when they're older. Those are the two things I think you can see. But fundamentally, in terms of the type of dog you're going to deal with, right? What the good end use for that dog is going to be, you make that selection based on the breeding, right? Not based on the puppies, because puppies can
mm-hmm.
change a lot. Like people think, oh, you know, like when I pick a puppy for myself out of the litter, you know what I tell the breeder now? If I was buying from a breeder, or even if I buy from myself, or even if I keep one from my own breeding, I say I'll take the puppy that is social and has a big head and likes to eat food. Give me
Yeah.
that one.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want
Yeah,
anything that's super nervy. I don't want anything that's like, you know, super like crazy. I just want the one in the middle. Give me Mr. Middle. I'll
Yeah.
yeah.
take that one.
You know what I tell
You
people that
trainers,
come
you
over?
trainers always say that because y'all gonna get it out of the dog somehow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I tell people when they come over to look at puppies, I'll tell them to take a look, do whatever you want to do, make your pick. I'll mark that puppy for them. I say, now go eat lunch, a couple of restaurants around here, good Cajun restaurants and all that good stuff, and come back an hour later and let's take a look again. And then see if you pick that same puppy.
Yep.
And that's one way I've been doing that for a long time. Some people they come, and that's the one I want to say. You sure? Why don't you try this? Go and come back, and they just don't. They want to pick it, and hey, that's fine. But I
Yep.
just kind of find just taking a look at them when they come in, go take a break, come back and look, because right before they get in, they may tell me they're coming at 1 o'clock, and they show up at 3 o'clock. Where I fed the puppies, and then the better puppy or the better puppy for their situation may be over in the corner laying down just because he's kind of full and just ate. But if they go take that break, they go eat lunch and they come back, now you get a different look at all the puppies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They change. And that's the other thing, too, is like when you look at a litter, and let's say the litter's 8 weeks, what people don't realize is all those puppies did not develop at the same pace, right? You ever watch like kids, like those of you that have kids, or if you're like, deal with kids, whether you're a coach or a teacher or whatever else, you'll see kids in grade 1 and all the way through to grade 8 that look vastly different, even though they're the exact same age. Why? Because some of them are developing at a faster rate than others. You see that great the kid in grade 7, he has a freaking beard already. And then the other one sitting next to him looks like he's 8 years old. You
Mm-hmm.
know, they're developing at a different rate. So obviously, the guy with the beard in grade 7, he's probably going to be better at, like, more physically capable. He's going to be stronger. He's probably going to be more confident because he's already more mentally and physically mature than a kid that is the exact same age as him. That maybe is like maybe like even like 1 or 2 years behind, right? In terms of his maturity when compared to that kid with the beard, right? You see it all the time with human beings. And I believe that it's the same with dogs. Like you'll see puppies in a litter where it's like this puppy is like look even like the size and everything, right? Like, ah man, like this one's a little bit smaller than the others. It doesn't mean he's going to be the smallest puppy in the end. He could end up being the freaking biggest. Just means he's like maybe a week behind, right? And for puppies, being a week behind has a huge impact on what they show mentally, physically, all of that stuff, right? And I'll find that in litters, you'll see a bit of disparity where some puppies are, maybe acting like they're 8 weeks and they're at 8 weeks, and some puppies are maybe like more in the 7, 6.5 range, right? So I believe that the place where they're at in their physical and mental development has an impact on how they might show when you're running various tests on them. So that's why it's not so accurate that you can just see it like when you come and pick them out.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Um, Out of all those dogs we just talked about, the police, the sport, and a personal protection dog, in your experience, which one usually had the strongest mentality or the hardest dog?
Um, Man, if I think about like, there are some dogs. I wouldn't say like it's a little bit like different. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, compare the a guy, compare a guy that was like a Navy SEAL to a mixed martial artist to I don't know, a police officer.
Okay, okay, okay.
They can
Okay.
both be tough guys and they can both be really good at like what they do in the context of what they do, but then maybe if they were put in that other circumstance they wouldn't have excelled the same way,
Right.
right? Or maybe you get a guy that can freaking do all of it, right? Like for sure there
Mhm.
are guys that can do all three, and I'm pretty sure there are guys that have done all three, but like for the most part everybody has like certain qualities that lend them more to certain things. So like the type of dog I would pick if I was like, when I think about all the dogs I have in my kennel right now, right? If I wanted a police dog, I would pick a certain dog. If I wanted a protection dog, I would pick a certain dog. And if I wanted a sport dog and I can't pick any of the ones I have now, I would probably take a certain dog, right? That all three of those dogs are different.
Right.
You know what I
Well,
mean? All three of them are different because they each have certain character traits that will lend them to those specific jobs. You know what I mean? Like
right.
protection dog, I don't care if he has the best grip. I care that
Mhm.
he's committed, he's about that life, but he's also not a psychopath that like I can't have him out in public and I can't have him around my family. You
Right.
know what I
Right.
mean? Like there's a balance there. And what a lot of people don't realize is, you know, you'll see certain things, like especially like, look, everybody in dogs, we all live on freaking social media in this day and age. And you
Yeah.
see different guys posting stuff. You'll see that Mally just hammering on the bicep, just big, deep, pushing grips, super nice gripping behavior, super fast, long attacks. And he's just a unit. But then you find out, hey, he's got to live in the freaking kennel because, like, if he's loose in the house and like I trip and fall, he's gonna attack me. You know what I mean? Like that kind of dog where it's like he's got so much, dominance and intensity that he's not so easy maybe to live with, or he's not so safe to live with, and you always kind of be on your P's and Q's with him,
Yeah.
versus the dog where it's like, yeah, he's more like kind of social and easygoing, but man, that dog can really perform on the sport field. You know what I mean? Like he's not letting
Right.
you down when you go in trials. So
Right.
these are just examples, So it's
Mhm.
it's I wouldn't say like everybody's always looking to place one over the other, and I would say, listen, you want a mixed martial artist, go do mixed martial artist shit and find the
Right.
best version of that you can. You want a Navy SEAL? Go do Navy SEAL shit and find the best version of that you can. You're not sending the mixed martial artists to do close quarters combat in the Middle East, and you're not sending the Navy SEAL to go fight in the cage. And there's a
Mhm.
reason for that,
Yeah.
right? They might have complementary qualities, right? Fundamental qualities like toughness and all that type of stuff, but the physical traits and the mental traits might not mesh so well, right? So it's people really have to get their heads off of this idea that they're like, trying to place one above the other. There is no
And,
one
and
above the other.
yeah, and intermixing, yeah, the concepts because they all different. Let me ask you
Yes,
this: if it was only one discipline you could teach, it- it's the only style you can go with, which one would that be?
I would do dog sport. And I'll tell you why I love dog sport. I love dog sport because dog sport for me, I'm a competitive guy, right? I love dog training and I'm competitive. Well, where do you go if you're competitive and you love dog training? Like you train pet dogs, it's fun and all, right? Fixing behavior is rewarding, but at the end of the day, you're only really competing against the dog, right? You're being bad, I need to get you to be good, right? And you're competing against outcomes. Oh, my last outcome was X, let me make the next outcome Y, right? And it's rewarding, don't get me wrong. Changing people's lives and making them and their dogs have better lives together, super rewarding, right? But for me, stepping on the field, right, and being put in front of a judge, right, and here's how you're doing your obedience, here's how you're doing your protection, here's how you're doing your track, and you're being compared to 140 other handler teams and dog teams. Man, that's where you really find out. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like that's where the rubber really meets the road. There's no training like that training because every little thing matters. Whereas the police dog, he tracks, he gets to the he's a good committed tracker. Do I care if he pendulums on a corner? Do I care that if he increases speed after taking a left turn on the track? Do I care if he overshoots an article, doubles back, and indicates it? No, I just care that he did it, right? He's a cop dog. I just
Right.
care that he did it. I care that he ultimately finds the suspect. That's what I care about. Whereas an IGP, every one of those little things matters. And it's the devil is in the details. And the more you work on these little details, the more you have to push the dog to excel in all these places, right? And not make mistakes as much as you can make him not make mistakes. And then do it all with no equipment, no rewards, nothing. For me, that's the most difficult thing that I can think of to do. And that's why it's most entertaining. And I get to compare it to what other people did. So I can be like, God damn, you know what? That guy was better than me today. That guy was better than me today. Him and his dog were better than me today. Man,
Mhm.
I want to be better than him next time. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
John, you got something?
Yeah, I never got into competing. I competed in two trials. One was a Canine Pro Sport many years ago, and then there's a local, that Continental Kennel Club out here. They had an event. I know the guy that owns the club, and he was like, "John, we need dogs, man. Bring one of your dogs in." And I went out and just cakewalked through that. The Canine Pro Sport soured me towards competing and kind of participating in the sports stuff because some of that stuff is so cliquish, and it turns a lot of people away because of that being real
Yeah.
cliquish. And if you don't click up with certain people, if the judge don't like you, if the judge don't know you, he's going to grade you harder than somebody else that he knows or he's seen more often than you. And I don't get do well with in those situations. I just kind of have a problem with that, and it steered me away from any kind of sport work like that. Now I'll go and support other people that I know that's competing in sports, whether it be PSA, Schützen, IPG, whatever they call it now, or whatever. Me and my wife, we've traveled to different states, many states, to support other people, friends that I know that competed, and I've seen it, and I know how to train for a lot of that stuff. But as far as competing in it and getting so close to it, I just kind of learned to stay my distance just because I don't like those type of people. And those sports will turn away a lot of people that want to compete in it, that like that competition, because of how some of those people are. I went to one club, and the lady told me, she said, "What kind of dog you got?" I said, "Oh, I have Mal's and Dutches." "Well, we're strictly a German Shepherd club, and it has to be an imported Shepherd and all." I said, "Lady, I don't care what you do. I'm here to support my buddy Dennis. I'm not here to get into that." And that really kind of pushed me away. I'm just there spectating. But the attitude that some of these people have in the sports world push a lot of people away from it, and I wish that can be better, because there's a lot of people that want to train their dogs for sport and want to get into it and grow it, but they can't because the people that kind of run those organizations.
Let me
I,
ask you something. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I've been kicked out of two dog clubs.
Damn.
You know, I had probably like half of my region hating me, and probably still about 25% of them do. You know, that's the dog sport world. But that's the thing. The
Mhm.
reason why dog sport, everybody always wants to pretend that it's like this big, like it should be kumbaya and blah blah blah. We're competing, baby. Everybody
Yeah, that's
wants to
true.
pretend like, oh, we should all, hold hands and sing together in harmony. You know, the reality is human beings are competitive. Human
Mhm.
beings are exclusive. They're always looking to exclude, right? Regardless of what you might say, you're always looking to find something different about somebody so you can say, you know what, that's the other. Because we are fundamentally tribal. You want to talk about genetics? We are tribal, right?
Yeah,
We grew up
yeah,
in small groups. Like they say that you can only really ever be close to, we evolved in small groups, right? Human
right.
beings lived together in small hunter gatherer groups for probably a lot longer than we ever had any kind of civilization, right?
Mhm.
So the reality is we're always like that. And then when you add a level of competition, maybe in the past we were competing for food and for land to hunt on, right?
Mhm.
Now we're competing for stupid, useless trophies in dog sports. But at the end of the day,
Mhm.
competition is competition,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And it's what creates that type of behavior, right?
Mhm.
yeah.
So
Hmm.
I'm very comfortable. I used to bother me too, but then I said, you know what? Man, you want to compete, let's compete. I want it. I'm not a member of any dog club, right? I'm not a member of any club. I have not been a member of an organized club in a long time, but I like to compete, and I love the sport, right? And I love the complexity of the sport, and that's what drives me to do it. Not, oh, I'm looking to make friends and blah blah blah. Like, yeah, I got
Mhm.
friends. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, but I didn't go into it looking for that. I went into
Mhm.
it looking to test myself, test my ideas about training, and test my dogs. And
Mhm.
that's why I went into it. And and that's what's kept me coming back to it. And yeah, you need a team, but your team doesn't have to be a club. There's always someone for you out there. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like you'll find, if you are committed to what you do, and you believe in something, that you'll find one other person that's like that, and you'll start hanging out together. Then you'll find another person and another person. Next thing you know, there'll be 4 or 5 of you, and you guys are a team. You can call yourself a club, you can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, and you
Mhm.
guys are all doing it together because you have a shared vision in your head about what it should be and what it's like,
Mhm.
right? So that for me
Yeah.
is dog sport. I love the competition. I like training with the group of guys that I train with. We share similar mindset. We share similar taste in dogs. We share similar taste in training. And that's what we do. And that's, for me, that's how I found success in this sport, and I found enjoyment of this sport. Um, and like I always say to people, listen, if you want something bad enough, you're not going to let other people convince you not to do it. When I became a dog trainer, you know how many of the people, especially people I knew in the dog sport, hated on me. I got kicked out of a club because I became a professional dog trainer. You know, all that shit, right? Has is
Right.
this, has is that, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. I wanted it bad enough and I did it. You know, I don't let anybody tell me what I can and cannot do and what I
Mm-hmm.
should and should not like. And that's it fundamentally, you know. So my advice to anybody is look, for you, you got to find what motivates you and then pursue that. And it may be dog sport isn't it, or maybe that specific dog sport isn't it. Go find a dog sport where it's like, man, I could really get into this. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
mean? And
Mm-hmm.
get after
Right.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
one thing. That's one thing I kind of noticed too. For instance, I'm trying not to blow up my son's wrestling club, but once we started wrestling, we didn't have a lot of engagement and things like that. But once they start seeing that we dedicated, we not going anywhere. Then we start going out and competing and whooping on that ass like we did Saturday. People start to open up to you and things like that because and even with this podcast, when I started the podcast, I got messages. Oh, you can't do that. You ain't been in such and such this long. Blah blah blah. I'm like, man, fuck you. I'm gonna do what I want to do. You know what I mean? And so yeah, I think sometimes when it comes to tribalism, we do have to prove ourselves. Because, like John, I've talked to you many times. You've been like, man, I've seen so many people come and go out this thing, and it's when you start to show that, like, I'm here to stay, that people
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, give you that respect that you kind of
Oh
want
yeah.
to. Yeah,
When
Yeah.
I tell people, Joe, when I jumped off the porch with dog training and decided, hey, this is it. Let's have at it. I was a truck driver for years, and I used to argue with the dispatcher about getting home. I got to go home and do some dog training. You know, but when I decided to jump, of course, I had people, they didn't like my style, they didn't like this, but they couldn't deny the results. They couldn't deny what I put out. It's unconventional to a lot of people, but that's
Mhm.
what I choose. That's my lane that I choose, and I perfected it. So I kind of shifted towards the scent work, and I'm doing a lot of different kind of scent work, and I do it a little different than a lot of people do. But I haven't had many dogs that went to certify that didn't pass. But so yeah, you were right. We all have to find what we like, what we enjoy, like-minded people that enjoy doing what we do and how we do it. And then that small group can defeat a lot of people that's not really together.
Right.
The sports stuff that I experienced back in the day was just the people that like the one club, the lady owned the field that they would try on. The judges, she would fly the judges in. They would stay in her guest house. She wouldn't compete with her dogs, but she put everything was on her dime at her place. So quite naturally, it was kind of biased for and
Yeah.
all that
Yeah.
stuff or
Control
whatever.
that. Yeah.
But yeah, and like some people in the Rottweiler world, right quick, Joe, they do the ZPT test. I think I mentioned this to you the other day. Buddy of mine in Arizona, the guy that he got his dog from Michigan, they just kind of stalled out on getting that test done until they can get in front of the judge that they knew would be a little more lenient. And the regulation said it goes like this. So how you guys get around that? Now, I'm big on organizing stuff. I'm big on following the rules or the rules. Let's stick by the rules, and it shouldn't be so much deviation of the rules to where you can get around it. I just don't understand that stuff when it comes to. Well, I understand it, but I don't like it. And that's kind of
Yeah.
what keeps me away from them. Yeah.
Hey guys,
Yeah.
again,
I think,
let's get the likes up, and then after Haas get through with this one, we're gonna go into a quick little Q&A period. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, I think, look, the end of the day, judging is always a subjective thing. And I've been robbed by the judges before. I've been robbed, right? But you know what? You show up enough times, you'll be robbed, but
Uh-oh, we lost him.
See if we can get him back in, Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I'll go on until he gets back in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just some of these people, man, they're so rude when you go to these willing to share a lot of knowledge. They kind of want to nickel and dime you, and a lot of it, I guess, is a test just to see if you're going to stick around, if you're willing to get through the tough part to get to the end. You know, and before I got in trouble with one of them or something really bad, I just kind of decided that ain't my cup of tea. You know, I'm not a part of the clique. I am the clique. I'm my own clique. I've said that
Yeah.
before. So on here, you know,
Right.
yeah. So um, just different strokes for different folks, you know, and people have to find their niche and what they're good at and what they like doing and what they enjoy doing.
Right. And like
Yeah.
you said about like-minded people, you know what I'm saying? Because some people might not want you in a cliques or whatnot, you know what I mean?
They
'Cause
exactly.
especially when it's like you said, it's competition. You know what I mean? Oh,
It's
damn, no
competition.
competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of
Here you go.
competition. Bring
Yeah.
Hey
bring that
guys,
heat in.
sorry, I'm on my phone, so somebody called me and bounced me out. So if it happens again, I'll just jump back in. Listen,
Okay.
yeah, just quickly about the judges. I always say, listen, I've been given gifts by judges and I've been robbed by judges. And you
Hmm.
show up enough times, both those things are going to happen to you. So, you
Hmm.
know, I think everything kind of balances out in the end. At the end of the day, seek excellence. And when you seek excellence, excellence is undeniable, regardless of whatever the judge, you know, gave you, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
So that's always been my outlook on it.
Right, right. Okay, I'm gonna take some questions here. The no pill man. So reactivity in protection dog is good in moderation, is what he's
Not
asking.
general reactivity,
Right.
right? Like, what do you like? Everything like, oh, your dog's just an asshole out and about. No, that's not good. Just like, you know, a dog that you know is a police dog that you know likes to bite shouldn't be biting random people. That dog should
Mhm.
be biting only when directed to bite the individual that he is directed to bite, right? So no, a dog that leans towards being more on the reactive side in terms of the aggression, yes, I think that's a good thing from a protection dog standpoint. That's a dog that's going to notice things more. That's a dog that's going to be more of an active deterrent. But no, your dog should not be generally reactive, right? Your dog should not be just in public going off on people. Like that's not a
Yeah.
good thing.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I agree with that. Yeah.
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 Now she said gatekeeping is important. You damn right.
You know, I was talking. I see it all the time. You know, there's young guys on the internet, and they're always going on about, you know, whatever realm of dog training they're trying to be accepted in. In this day and age of social media, there's always like these people on whatever it is, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, that they're the accepted kind of like, ooh, if these people say you're good, then you're good. You know,
Mm.
fuck all of that.
Yeah.
And I tell them the same exact thing. The reason why I have the presence I have on social media is because I said literally, I am not going to let these guys define my success or failure,
Hmm.
right? My success or failure is going to come exclusively from me. I'm going to share what I think, how I think. I'm going to take the risk of being wrong, right? I'm going to show people what I do for better or for worse. And I'm going to let them decide for themselves whether I'm worthy I'm a worthy person to listen to, or whether I have value to offer in this specific context, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And obviously, some people decided yes, and some people decided no. But you
Yep.
have to be willing to step forward and not wait for gatekeepers to be like, yeah, you know, that has guy, he's a good dog trainer. I don't give a shit if every one of them said I'm terrible tomorrow. At the end, well, I might not say I don't give a shit. I'll be pissed off, but it's
Hmm.
not going to change what I do,
Yeah,
Right.
right?
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I had a
Yeah.
guy named Ted Summersickler in Oklahoma. Me and him, he just years ago, he just had this thing, him and some other guys about just jumping people. I think they could I think they were just trying to run people off, aggravate people. Ned, Mims, you're not recreating the wheel. No, I'm not. But I'm doing the wheel how I want it done and what works
Yeah.
for me. And I
Yeah.
said, you're not going to stop it, Ted. I've been doing this longer than you have, obviously, because I just found out about him a couple of years ago. And it just doesn't stop me. I'm just going to keep on going and keep going. And I have videos that I used to show the problem. When I go out, I show the dog with the problem. I'll go back and work on the problem. Then I'll come back and I'll show the fix. And then I'll put the two videos together. The problem and here's the fix. I'm not going to show the fix. That's not to be shown like that, I don't think, in my opinion. But that's what that happens more often than not. The bigger name people or so-called bigger name people try to stomp on the smaller people. Well, I'm not one to stomp on. I'm not small enough for you to stomp on. I'm not going to let you stomp on it, on me, you know. So we just keep pushing and pushing. And like we said, Joe, we find like-minded people that talk our talk and walk our walk, and then that's what we go with.
Yeah.
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 That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And one thing about living online, well, not living online, but just doing this kind of stuff online, you cannot be easily embarrassed. You know what I'm saying?
No.
I might sometimes in my mind I be churning. Is this gonna be a stupid question I'm asking? Shit, ask it. Because most
Yeah.
time I find doing this, the simple questions are good because I can ask them and I get different variations of the answer. And people be like, damn, they noticed that. You know what I mean? So I kind of stick to the simple things and don't be afraid to ask whatever.
For those of you that don't believe in negative reinforcement, I want you to have an experiment. If any one of these people runs a social media, I guarantee you, if you have 20 comments and one of them is negative, you will forget all the 19 positive, and that one negative will stick in your mind. That is the
Yeah.
power. That is the power of negativity,
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
right? That is the power of negativity. So now, if you look at that from a dog training perspective, makes a lot more sense why we use that negative reinforcement, because it has a lot more
It's
power
sick.
than 19 instances of positive reinforcement. Not that
Good
you
point.
shouldn't use anything exclusively, right? But you have to be ready to accept the negativity. You will come. Negativity is going to come on this podcast.
Yep.
Negativity is going to come on any content you post. There will be negativity, and the more people that see it, the more negativity will occur, right? And if you're not comfortable with that, then hey, man, stay offline at the
Yep.
end of the day.
You're exactly right. 20 great comments, that one is
Yeah.
gonna turn over in your
And you
mind.
think about it.
Yeah,
You're
you
like,
do.
that son of a bitch,
Yeah.
and you're thinking about it. And
Yeah.
and you're like, who the fuck is this guy? And it's probably some like dude that's like got like a Labrador retriever maybe in his
Right.
house. He's never done anything and he's commenting and you're just like thinking about him. It's like, man, you
Yeah.
can't get these, don't ever get it twisted. Nobody who's successful, nobody who has really done anything worthy of doing is on somebody else's shit writing negative things, right?
Mhm.
But these are the people that you think about, and it's like,
Right.
man, be careful with that. Don't let that
Yeah.
infect you.
Yep. And then and the number one thing it does, besides just staying on your mind, is if you engage in it. I notice like we all in different Facebook groups, but if they see me now, I get people trying to banner with me. And
Yeah.
you know what that really is doing? Because they don't really have nothing to debate. They just see you. Oh, you
Yep.
didn't suck on the podcast. They just want to waste your time
Yep.
and trying to wave their hand so you can see them. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like I'm gonna say,
Yep.
"Oh, you interested? Let me have you on the podcast." You know that
Yeah.
shit don't work. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
here goes another question: can you use an e-collar to build toy drive and a lower drive dog that you already have a play relationship with?
I would say not with an e-collar, right? You can use an e-collar to build frustration, which you could then channel into the toy. Generally speaking, if you have a dog that, every dog has a limit to how much drive they have for a toy. There are some dogs that are extreme, and there are some dogs that, have a moderate amount of toy drive, right? And at the end of the day, what brings that toy drive up, right, is how hard did the dog have to work to get the toy? And can you find that happy place where you're building the resistance level of the dog? Think about toys as like a bench press, right? So let's say you have like 20 kilograms, right? And you can just hit that 20 all day, right? It's nothing for you. Okay. Now, the dog, if he's just basically doing a 20-kilogram bench press for the toy, it's easy. He's doing it, he's getting the toy. It's not a hard thing. But now let's say you go 30 and now he's like, oh, it's a little harder. But then he does it and gets the toy. Boom. Now he's like, God damn, that toy became way more valuable because he had to go through something to get that toy a little bit. Right. So the harder in his mind he has to work for the toy, the more he desires it. Right. The more he wants it because he's like working harder for it. Right. But if you try to make him work too hard right away, he's going to quit. It's not
Yep.
worth it. Right?
Yep.
So what you do is you slowly build up how hard the dog has to work for it. And then of course you use variability where sometimes it's easy and then sometimes it's really hard and sometimes it's in the middle. And now the dog's never quite sure what's going to happen. And this is what builds the motivation because now the dog's like, well, I'm working hard for it, so I must really want it, And that's how you get the dog to the point where they're showing more maybe drive than they're willing to do more than their drive level genetically is for that toy.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
My question to the guy would be, what have you tried for toys? Because some toys may pique his interest more than others. The little squeaky toy may work for one dog, and then the little rubber toy or the Kong may work for the other dog. Then I've gotten an old sock, and I put a bottle in a water bottle. Squeaky, just a little different. So you have to sometimes play with different dogs and see what spur them on to maybe if that'll bring them up sometimes in drive. Just a different toy is different to different dogs, you know. So you have to use that sometimes to find out what motivates them. What motivates them? That may be the thing. The toy with the treats in it, the kind of Kong that when he bites on it or when he gets it, he smells the treats in it, and now he wants it more because he knows the treat is in it. So sometimes that you may be able to use that to get him motivated to build it up some.
Right.
Yep.
My question is for Mims as well. How much time do you dedicate each day to a dog's task? The retrieve, for example. Either one of y'all can jump in.
Well,
Go
I
ahead,
use
John.
it. It depends on the dog and where the dog's temperament is. There's no set number or no set time on how much you use it. You learn how to read the dog and learn when he's hit his top, close to the top, as far as his threshold, and then you put the game up, and then you go back and you learn how to push him just a little bit more the next session, then you back off and put him up. So each session you extend it a few more minutes and learn how to read the dog in order to get the best results or optimize. Every session has to be successful in that dog's mind where he's success. But you also have to learn how to read the dog to where you don't burn him out. You say, I don't want to look for it no more. Now you kind of lost him. So you always want to end on a good session, but just enough, and you pay him to where he gets it right before he decides to give up. So then he'll say, if I go a few more seconds, I'll get it, or I'll find what I'm looking for. That's what I use. So there's no set time that I go out for a session. I just learn. I know how to read the dog. I learn how to read a dog. If it's a new one, I have to play that game with him and learning his body language and knowing what to look for before you decide that session is over.
Okay, Has.
Yeah, for me, any kind of training, I mean, typically it's 10 to 15 minutes a session,
Okay,
whatever it is I'm working on.
got you. What's popping with Mr. Handsome Chico? That dog is super beautiful, Has.
Nothing really. Like he's still here. I still work him every day. He's a very good looking dog. That's for sure.
Got you.
Yeah.
What's this super dog puppy training? Is it true or not? Is it a myth? Y'all heard of
Super
that?
dog.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is neither. Um,
Super dog. Yeah,
He might be
yeah.
referring. I bet you he's referring to biosensor.
maybe
Biosensor on
so.
puppies. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's because I've seen it called like the Super Dog program. So if
yeah,
that's what you're referring to, it's just this process by which you take puppies between day 1 and day 14, and subject them to various physical manipulations. And the idea is that it creates more resilience in the dog. Um, I mean, having done both, I can't say I've noticed a difference. You know what I mean? Like I've done biosensor on puppies and I've also not done it. And I can't say that I really notice a difference.
yeah. Me neither. I've never noticed not vastly different. I think the biggest thing I noticed is sometimes when they get a certain age and you don't handle them as much when they're younger, you can pick them up and they'll be kind of like, oh, let me go, let me go, let me go. You know, they just that
Yeah.
handling part of it is maybe what's missing. That's about it. I've tried several different things like that, different ways, different things I've heard, experimented with litters, and I call it sacrificing litters, but it's not as bad as people say, oh, you sacrificed and did this. No, I just, as far as, let me try this litter this way and see how it compares to the other litter. Let me
Yeah.
try this litter this way, see how it compares to that litter. And I've done stuff like that, and you get mixed results sometimes, and sometimes you get a lot of consistency. So
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, how many reps does a dog need to complete in the polishing phase of training before you consider it fully trained on that behavior? Depends on the dog. What you got?
Yeah, I mean that answer can vary so much. Like what are we talking about? Like are we talking about dog sport? Well, you're never done polishing behaviors in dog sport. Think about think about an athlete, right? Like think about, I always compare dog sport to combat athletes, right? Like that boxer, every time he goes into training camp, he's working on, maybe different things, but he's still working on all the same things he was working on when he was an amateur, right? Because that's never done. You're never like, oh yeah, like I don't need to jab anymore. My jab's good. It's like, no, you
Mm.
work that jab every freaking time you train. You
Every
work that cross.
session. Yeah.
Yeah, like you might be focusing more on, like, let's say, I don't know, slips or whatever, but like you're still touching that jab, you're still touching that cross, right? So it's like it's the same with dog sport. You're never done. Every time you train, it's not like, oh, he knows how to do this. It's no, I need to either work on something to make this a little bit different than how it is, or I need to make it better. It's a never-ending process, right?
Right.
Where it's not over. The dog might fundamentally understand healing, but there's always improvements to be made in the healing or retrieves or whatever it is you want to come up with. Now, if you're just talking about a pet dog or something, it's like, yeah, does he know how to come when he's called? Okay, yeah, he knows how to come. It's like, and even with that basic stuff, you still have to reinforce it from time to time, both positively and
Hmm.
negatively. Otherwise, it will slip. It will slip not because he doesn't remember it, it'll slip because all of a sudden the motivation and obligation that you associated with that specific behavior has not been present for a long period of time. So he needs that to come back into the picture so that you can strengthen that behavior again. It's not a question of he forgot how to do it. It's just that he realized there's really nothing in it for him to do it. That's all. Why
Yeah,
should
you
I come?
got a little lazy at it. Yeah, if you don't use
Yeah.
it, you don't lose it. You just they get a little lazy, a little lackadaisical, and it hadn't been required the last 10 times you took them out. So that I guess that would be the answer to that. Yeah, that was a good answer, Hans. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, man. I think we good. I would like to thank Hash for coming out. And man, you was cooking today, brother. Everybody in the chat seem to be loving it. And John, thanks for coming helping me because I don't
Yes,
have
sir.
the expertise as he does and things like this. So all these collaborations, everything's working together for the
Hmm.
whole other community. You know what I'm saying? We get some good shit from it. But
Yes, sir.
John, we'll start from you. How do we get in touch with you? And how do we follow you and all that good stuff?
Okay, I'm on Facebook under John Mims. I'm on TikTok under John Mims. I prefer giving out a phone number and have people call me because I'm just an old fashioned guy. When I can talk to people, I can hear the sincerity in their voice when I talk to them. So my number is 225-200-9162. And I'm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, down south. You live north of me, Joe. So when I say down south, I'm a little more south than you with the gumbo. It's a lot better down this way.
Yeah. I'm in the middle south. I'm right there on the border of Missouri and Arkansas.
Yeah.
Shit. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so yeah, I'm way down south from Canada. So you come down here, you may not want to go back up. You get some of this good stuff.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you leave the dogs and everything. I'm never coming home. You know,
Yeah.
things like
I'm
that.
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
to Florida. I'm actually coming to Florida this winter. I'll be down in Florida for a month and a bit. So
Oh really?
I'm
Yeah, Florida's a little different than Louisiana, and you
yeah.
you hear of the Cajun culture and stuff like that. It's yeah, Florida's a little different. There's a little southern twang to it, but it's nothing like Louisiana, Mississippi, some of Georgia, some of Texas. But Louisiana, man, you just can't beat it. You know, so
Yeah.
Nice.
maybe
Nice.
we'll have to Joe put something together and we get him down this way
Yeah, I
and
was
see.
gonna I was gonna ask him, are you one of those guys that do seminars and all that stuff in the
I do
States?
them occasionally. It has
Yeah.
to make sense. I'm not one of these guys that's traveling every year doing like 10 seminars. I do like a couple a year, right?
Hmm.
It's not my favorite way to train. But I do them occasionally. I don't do them a lot, but I do them occasionally.
Mhm.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, hey man, we do really thank you so much for coming, man, sharing your knowledge. I just want you to just personally tell everybody where to find you and all your platforms and all that good stuff.
Sure. You can find us at shieldcanine.ca. Shield, SHIELD, K number 9.ca. We have online training, we have in person training, we have multiple locations in Canada. And then we also have an Instagram, shield_canine. And then you can find me, Shield Canine Dog Training, on YouTube as well. And then we also sell protection dogs. So shieldcaninedogs.com. You can see them there. And yeah, that's me.
All right, brother. Hey, everybody that tuned in, thank y'all for tuning in. Haz, thank you once again. John, thank you once again. We'll
Yes,
see y'all
sir.
later.
See you
Take it
guys
easy.
later.
All
All
right.
Bye
right.
bye.